Yes. Good evening, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Newsmaker Live with Laura. If it's Wednesday, it's Newsmaker Live, where we make your stories our stories. This week, I am not in a happy place. Last week, I mentioned of some horrendous events that had taken place, and this week is just a continuation of last week's. I mean, last week we heard of the heinous crime perpetrated against two teenage students in the comfort of their homes. 3 masked men entered, broke in, and violated them in the worst possible way ever, snatching from them their most precious treasure. That we must all denounce. That we must not perpetuate. The culture of rape, that men feel that they can just come into your homes and snatch that which is most important and most precious to you. This week is absolutely no difference. We have a number of rape cases reported to the police yet again this week. But before we go into this, I would like to talk about some incident that happened, which kind of brought a smile to my face, and I was hoping that the rest of the week would continue that way. And it's about heroes, the most unlikely of heroes. Carlton O'Chillier. We heard of this man who had the most wonderful spirit. I mean, it warms my heart. Like a friend of mine would say, it warms the cockles of my heart to know that there are good Samaritans around. Carlton O'Chillier, in a bid to save the life of a pregnant woman on Friday afternoon, himself almost lost his life. Can you imagine? You're going out there to try to save the life of someone, and in the process, almost losing your life. He almost met his demise as he was sucked into a manhole on the upper end of Jeremy Street. The good news is he eventually made his way back to safety after 2 hours, when most people had thought, well, he had succumbed to the raging waters that Friday afternoon. But you know what's so amazing about it is that this is not where his concern for this young expectant mother ended. While at the hospital himself being treated for bruises and injuries that he may have suffered while in the manhole, he took the time out to assure himself that this young mother-to-be was all right. Bravo to Carlton O'Chillier. However, it begs the question, why is it that citizens feel the need to uncover the city's manholes to help with the raging waters, the raging flood waters within the city limits? Where were the staff of the Ministry of Infrastructure? I mean, if it is that the citizens could think of uncovering the manholes to help to have the water recede, why would not the staff and the Ministry of Infrastructure, the people, the personnel within that ministry who are responsible, not think of that, thereby putting in place the necessary safety measures, or the safety signs, the hazard signs that would alert citizens and pedestrians that there is danger up ahead? Because I can just imagine you're going about your business, you're trying to stay out of the floodwaters, you're trying to stay out of danger, and somebody's trying to get your attention. You're more focused on where you're trying to get to rather than the person who's trying to get your attention. And so by so doing, get yourself in even more danger, which is exactly what happened to the young expectant mother and the Carlton O'Chillier person. And it's just sad that he actually fell in the manhole that he uncovered to help with a situation. But all's well that ends well. So bravo, that does not take away from your heroic act. And the even more miraculous thing is, Carlton does not even see himself as a hero. And that, in my book, makes him even that much more of a hero. Bravo once more to you, Carlton. And to me, this is where the good news ends for the week. We heard of what has become a fast-growing import-export business in St. Lucia. 19 kilos of cocaine was confiscated at the Uwanora International Airport in a suitcase which was, get this, 90% full, en route to Toronto. That was quite ballsy of the exporter, don't you think? I mean, there was not even an attempt to disguise the drugs or to hide it under clothing. The suitcase was 90% full of drugs, which means that the exporter had to have had his inside agents, which speaks to an even more sinister scenario. I mean, this trafficker had to have had agents at every level. Now, the question I'm asking is, why was this suitcase not tagged and allowed to get into Toronto in order to nab the importer? I'm thinking by now we should have technology that would allow us to not put in anything that looks suspicious to the traffickers, but to be able to tag it, to track it while it's en route to its destination, thereby catching one of the traffickers who perhaps may lead us to the rest of the traffickers. I just couldn't understand why, and maybe somebody later today within the show would call and you know, expound a little bit more on that. I'm just thinking as a layperson, of course, and I'm thinking if I were in that position, I would want to track down that suitcase. I would want to flag it and monitor it and to see who picks it up. Because now that the suitcase is out of the system, it's taken out and it's in for evidence. Who is it going to implicate? We don't know, because it was tagless. It didn't have any names on it. Curious minds would like to know. Yesterday marked 4 years since the Monsieur tragedy. This was one of the deadliest accidents at St. Lucia, if not the most deadly accident that we have experienced in St. Lucia. 15 persons perished in that accident, and our hearts still bleed and ache for the remaining family members of these 15 people. One father lost all 3 of his children in that accident, plus their mother, who in turn lost all of her 7 children. Can you imagine? This is an entire family just wiped out. Wiped out. As I said earlier, our hearts still bleed and is still sore over this tragic incident, and we continue to pour out our condolences to the family members remaining of the victims of this tragic accident. And which brings me to the issue that I was speaking about earlier. And the word or phrase that came to mind when I heard of all those rapes taking place over the weekend and even today was helter-skelter. In the months leading up to the Tate LaBianca murders on August 10th, 1969, Charles Manson often spoke to the members of his family about helter-skelter, an apocalyptic war arising from racial tensions between blacks and whites. To my mind, in St. Lucia, I can see our own local version of helter-skelter. I can see mutiny rising between males and females. in St. Lucia, a country whose population spans 170,000 approximately, we have experienced 194 incidents of sexual assault, almost 60 cases of which were rapes. 60. Over the weekend only, we had 4. 4 cases of rape. You know, these rapists are not discriminatory, whether from age or location or circumstance. And while the rest of us were worrying about our property, our family, our animals, because one man lost his life over the weekend trying to save a cow, an animal. He cared enough about this animal to try to save it, and in the process lost his life. But meanwhile, we have these barbarians who would break into the sanctuary that we have carved out for ourselves, break into our homes, rape our children and grandmothers, our mothers, our aunties, our nenens. They will break into our homes and rape us. On Friday, a woman from Corinth met her fate when 2 masked men entered her home, raped her, and robbed her. We had another one on Saturday in Marshall, where another young woman was raped. And yet another, and this is what is killing me, a lot of these rapes are of young women. A 16-year-old allegedly was raped in Dennery on Sunday after being drugged, supposedly, by consuming what is called weed brownies or weed cake. And the sad thing is that there are rumors spreading that there may have been another female involved in perpetrating this act. And that after having drugged this young 16-year-old, you know, these guys came back, raped her, and when she tried to flee, ran after her with a machete, a cutlass. And if it were not for a good Samaritan, you know, getting her and taking her to the police, who knows what would have been her fate. People, this has got to stop. We cannot afford to have our country run over by these barbarians, these monsters. How would you feel if you came home one day and found some miscreant, some fiend raping your mother, your daughter, your niece, your baby, your grandmother? And you know, I'm certain that there's some people going, grandmother, who would want to rape? Yes, today, just today, a 97-year-old woman was raped in Monrepo and robbed. And I'm thinking, in most of these cases, once they have invaded your home and raped you, they steal from you. I'm asking myself whether they're coming in there to rob, or is it just plunder of any type? Is that what their mission is? Because it's not good enough that they rob you of your material things, but they rob you of something so precious. 3 16-year-olds within 1 week. 3 16-year-olds, and God knows how many in that 194 cases of assault that have been reported were underage. How many do we care, men of St. Lucia, women of St. Lucia, that this is happening in our country? You know, there's this young lady, and I am assuming just by the timbre of her voice that she's young, who calls every radio station, every talk show. She's called me several times, and I appreciate her calls, and I hope she continues to call, and I hope she calls this evening. You know, she calls and she says, it starts with us, it starts with us. Yes, it starts with us. But last I checked, we live in a civilized society, and that is why we have a state, and the state comprises of government officials and ministries and organizations set up, police force, set up to protect. And when the protection cannot be done, to persecute criminals, offenders of the law, to the fullest extent of that law, to ensure that future generations and other people are kept safe. And you know, what is even more saddening is this: the rapist could be just about anybody. You know, earlier I thought maybe we had a serial rapist on the loose, and we're not certain that it's not. We don't have a serial rapist, because nowhere in St. Lucia is far once you have a car, right? However, we do know that some of these cases are allegedly perpetuated by different people. For instance, a veteran police officer was recently accused of handcuffing and raping a woman at gunpoint. The officer was not arrested, but he's currently being under investigation. And we have not heard anything about the investigation, what state the investigation is at, what, you know, we don't know anything. All we know is that he's being investigated. And as far as I know, he's still on the job. Then we have a Jamaican security guard who was also accused of raping a young girl and harassing another one at on the Ridgeway Beach. You know, it's sad, because I hear a lot of people saying maybe it's young kids, you know, especially in the cases of the last week's incident with the young students. They're saying that they're thinking it's maybe students such as themselves. But regardless of whomever is perpetuating these crimes, it's just heinous, whether it's young. But we know that there are more than one person or one group of people. If the allegations prove to be true, we have at least one police officer and a security guard whose jobs are to protect and to serve. And yet the other ones causing us to look over our shoulders time and time again. Now, I know that there have been a number of calls for the implementation of a sexual predator registry. Many high-ranking officials have denounced such a registry, saying that after the criminals have been rehabilitated, then because St. Lucia is so small, then it makes it difficult for them to reintegrate in society. But it begs the question: after 194 cases of sexual assault, almost 60 of which are rape, bona fide rape cases, how many more must we endure before a registry is put into effect? How many more? How many more? Are we expecting or waiting for it to be the daughter or the mother or the grandmother or the baby of a celebrity or a high-ranking official or a prominent member of society before we do something? I mean, I heard the minister talk about mace, but you know, that mace that we're using, that she's suggesting that we use to protect ourselves, could itself be a danger to ourselves. Because in the process of using that mace, you're so agitated and you're so on edge, you could be spraying this thing into your own eyes rather than in the eyes of your attacker. how many more rapes must we endure before real mechanisms are put in place to help to deter, or at the very least, punish those people who feel that it is their right? And have no fear, this rape is not a crime of passion. It's very much a crime of control, and it's a crime against humanity. You know, and all of this is happening in November, or close to November, because some of it happened in October. And November is a month of observances. On November 19th, we will be marking the World Day for Prevention of Abuse and Violence Against Children. And on November 25th, we will be marking the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. Now, earlier today, I heard a senator, Senator Isaac, and I have a lot of time for Miss Isaac. She's a woman who has proven herself not to be afraid of anything. Whether she's popular, her decisions are popular, or otherwise. However, I heard her saying today that marches are obsolete. Those were her words, and I hope I'm not I think that's the word she used, obsolete, and that they're archaic, that they're, you know, what's the use of them? But I just want to say that if we must walk until every shoe that we own is undone and the soles are finished, if that's what it takes to be heard in this country, then that is what we're supposed to do. That is what we are going to do. If every shoe that we own needs to be completely destroyed because we're marching to be heard in this country, then this is exactly what we should be doing. Raise Your Voice St. Lucia has organized a public march for Wednesday, November 25th, which is actually the day for the International Day of Elimination of Violence Against Women. And they're proposing to start at Serenity Park, and the march is supposed to start at 2 p.m. and it goes on to Pena Street, right onto Meekwood Street, left into Labrie Street, left onto Jeremy Street, then right onto Manuel Street, right onto Meekwood Street again into the Derek Walcott Square, where they will be holding a vigil and hearing from community leaders and others. And I say bravo. And you know, to a certain extent, Senator Isaac is correct. This march on its own is not a panacea. It's not going to fix anything, but it is a start. It is a start. It is sending a message out to those monsters. I really want to use another word, but I'm going to temper my voice, my language. These monsters, these barbarians, we want them to know that we are out for you. We are going to get you, whether it is through ourselves or whether it is through the police force. We are going to get you. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. And this march is to announce just that. Beware. Beware. It is not a good thing. I mean, you have mothers. You must have children. If you don't have children yet, but at least you have a mother, a grandmother. And this is what you're doing. You're sick. You're sick individuals. And you will be caught one way or another. And I'm inviting, on behalf of Raise Your Voice, St. Lucia, I'm inviting all women and all men, wear your orange, black, or purple, to this march on November 25th, starting at Serenity Park from 2 p.m. Lend your voice Lend your time, invest your time. Allow yourself to be seen as denouncing rape against our women and children. When we come back, we will be speaking with a guest. Most of you already know her, but we will be introducing you to her when we come back. Stay tuned.